All right, man. It is, believe it or not, Wednesday, July 30th. We are 30 days out. If you're keeping track, 720 hours and change away from kickoff of Auburn at Baylor. Rob Browne here with Kevin Scarbinsky in Birmingham, Ronnie Sanders in Hoover. It'll cool us all off considerably to know that another one of our cohorts, Doug Dean, is up on the Kenai River in Alaska salmon fishing with a bunch of his friends from Birmingham. So there's probably 57 degrees up there. The water's probably 53. So it cools you off to think about it. But practice is starting, guys, in Auburn. A lot of storylines. We were talking before the show. You know, we know about Malcolm Simmons. Apparently he's practicing with the team. But Kevin, on this morning's show on this channel, Sidelines, from 8 to 9, Monday through Friday, you talked about something Hugh Freeze said, and let's get started with that.
Yeah, and he didn't say it for the first time today.
Yeah.
He actually said it at SEC Media Days, and it escaped a lot of people's attention because he didn't say it in the main media room, where they broadcast the SEC Network press conferences from live. And so he said it in, I think it was a SiriusXM radio interview. And he talked about how he was trying to build up Jackson Arnold's confidence after everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for him at Oklahoma last year. Not all his fault, certainly. And he suggested, or he didn't suggest, he actually said that he, in consultation with DJ Durkin, the defensive coordinator, that they eased up. They pulled some punches. They wanted Jackson Arnold to walk off the field every day feeling good about himself. And Hugh Freeze went even farther and said that was his old philosophy with his quarterbacks, that the number one priority in practice was for the quarterback to walk off the field feeling good about himself. And they coached from the defensive side accordingly. And he reiterated that today. He was asked about it at the fall camp kickoff press conference, if you will. And he said the same thing. And I think that has opened a lot of people's eyes. I'm anxious to hear what you guys think. And Ronnie, especially you, I don't know that I've ever heard a coach say that. We know quarterbacks are not live for contact. We know that the coaches do pull some punches with their quarterbacks, but I don't know that I've ever heard a coach put it quite the way Hugh Freeze has on this subject.
Yeah, I mean, we never really looked at it that way. I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it. Obviously, you want your quarterback to feel good. You want him to, not just go through the motions, and you want him to, feel confident leaving the field. But at the same point in time, you wanted to get the best out of everybody. I mean, we used to call it, it was ones versus ones. We used to call it good on good. And so, we didn't, the quarterback didn't get touched, but, we called it fair. I mean, we didn't pull any punches. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But that's certainly not the way that I ever did it on any staff that I was part of.
When was the last time any staff went live with the quarterback? I'm not talking just Auburn, but can we think of anybody?
That's a good question. And I mean, look, practices are so different than they used to be. I can remember early on, and this was interesting, and as I've said before, I kind of got an education in Southern football as the Auburn beat writer for the Birmingham News, covering Pat Dye and Larry Blakeney and Wayne Hall and James Daniel and that incredible staff. I can remember standing on the sideline of practice, and you could watch, with rare exceptions, you could watch just about every practice from beginning to end. Yep. You weren't watching calisthenics at the beginning. You got to watch the entire practice. And I'll never forget, I don't remember what was going on. Oh, it was Wayne Hall, the defensive coordinator, one of the toughest, meanest, scariest dudes you'll ever run across on a football field, and maybe off a football field. And Benji Rowland, the nose guard, rawhide, looks like he didn't lift weights. He lifted hay bales to develop that strength. Yeah. And Benji was a tough dude himself. Yeah. And Benji kept getting something wrong in practice. I don't remember what it was. And when his face kept getting redder and redder. They kept, do it again, run it again, run it again. And Wayne Hall finally got in his face and was just screaming at him. And they were nose to nose. And Wayne Hall said to Benji Rowland, "Go ahead. You want to hit me, don't you? Go ahead. Hit me." And I'm standing on the sideline thinking, dear Lord, please don't let Benji Rowland hit Wayne Hall, because if he does, Wayne Hall will die, and then I've got a whole story mess on my hands I got to deal with. Luckily, Benji Rowland displayed more self-restraint in those moments than I think I've ever witnessed from any human being in any situation. But that's just the way practice was in those days. I mean, it was they didn't. Now, Bo Jackson didn't necessarily work hard or get hit a lot in practice, but I can remember Jeff Berger getting hit in practice, and liking it. That's the way Jeff was.
Yeah.
He may be the toughest quarterback I've ever been around. Him and Freddie Kitchens.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, I've been to practice used to be open. I saw Bud Casey grab George Peoples, running back number 22 out of Plant City, Florida, grabbed him by the helmet, head first, and blood. I mean, I'm at practice with my dad. I was like, wow. My dad looked at me and said, "That's what is caught your attention?" You know, kind of like that's just the way it was. Well, you think about, Ronnie, what Kevin just said: Jackson Arnold, Deuce Knight, Ashton Daniels. Auburn's got a quarterback room. You got to find out, and you've been on staffs. When do you say, okay, I think this guy's tough, or you just have to wait till the first game to find out? You know what they did in high school. That's pretty indicative or predictive of human behavior going forward, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, I also think that, you go through spring and you go through, it's different now than it used to be. I mean, you've got those kids all year round. And so, when I was doing it, we called them, winter, summer workouts we call them voluntary mandatory workouts. It was voluntary. You be there, but it wasn't mandatory you play. So, if you wanted to play, you had to be there. But it's a different animal now. So yeah, I mean, you want guys to keep their confidence and all that stuff, but at the same point in time, you want to be able to make sure that you're ready for them. That they're game ready. So, I mean, go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying the only way they all got a green jersey on. You can't touch them. So you're just throwing chance to the win.
Now we know. Now let's be fair though. We know Jackson Arnold can handle contact. We know he can run the football.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he ran for more than 100 yards against Alabama last year. It wasn't like he threw for 400 yards when Oklahoma beat Alabama late in the season and knocked them out of the playoff and beat them 24-3. So we know he can run the ball and he can handle contact. And that's going to be the real question to me, is how much do they lean on him running the ball, and do they have a greater confidence level in being able to do that? Because as you said, Rob, they have a quarterback room now.
Yeah.
They got a couple of other guys they seem to be pretty confident in as well. And it was interesting to hear Hugh Freeze today talk about how he might use them. And he said he might be more likely, if they had to throw a go route, if they had to throw the ball down the field, he might be more likely to go to Deuce Knight. And if it was more of an RPO where you might lean towards the run option, he might be more likely to put in Ashton Daniels. I thought that was a little insight that we hadn't necessarily heard before.
I mean, Ronnie, platoon quarterbacks, situational quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, look, you do what you got to do to win, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, we're at Auburn, and what was it? I mean, we used Damian Craig and Patrick Nix. Spurrier used to rotate quarterbacks every other play at times when he was in Florida. So I mean, look, you do the things that you need to do to win the game.
I mean, the most successful duo of quarterbacks I can ever remember: 1979 Florida State went 11-0 with Wally Woodham and Jimmy Jordan at quarterbacks. That was pretty cool. And then you had 2006 Chris Leak out of Independence High School in Charlotte, North Carolina, Tim Tebow out of Nice and St. Augustine. But that was Chris Leak's team. It's
but Chris, we brought him in and he was handed the starting job as a freshman. I mean, we didn't have anybody else. So when we brought him in, I mean, he was, we told him it was him and Jamarcus Russell, who I believe was from Mobile. And we told both of them, we're like, okay, look, you're 1A and 1B on our board. Whoever commits first is, we're taking, and we're taking one guy and he's going to start. And Chris committed first, and so he started. But we didn't have a choice. I mean, there were no quarterbacks. I mean, when Rex Grossman left, and there were some off-field issues with him, but we ended up going to the NFL. There wasn't anybody that could play.
Yeah.
So our goal was to go out and sign a quarterback that we felt like could play. And so he's the first, he was the first guy that jumped in the boat that we felt could do that. So
yeah,
we rolled with him.
Yeah. You mentioned Pat Nix, probably the most impactful cold off the bench play by a backup quarterback, certainly in the history of the Iron Bowl and maybe in the history of the SEC, when he came in for Stan White in that 1993 Iron Bowl, and the game was in doubt. The undefeated season was in doubt, and he threw to the short side of the field, and for some reason Antonio Langham was not Frank Sanders on that particular snap. And we heard Terry Bowden, what kind of serendipity the way it worked out. And they threw to the short side of the field because Pat didn't have the strongest arm. Patrick didn't. So that's and that touchdown turned that game around.
Was that Tommy Johnson out of Niceville, Florida, over there on that side?
Yeah. Number 10, Alabama DB.
He
wasn't a bad DB either, but he wasn't Antonio Langham.
But half that team was former running backs that they switched to defensive backs. Ronnie, you like what Kevin's saying in this right now, Auburn running back it's so cool to go back and look. Now it's, last year you have a guy like Jarquez Hunter, absolute stud. You got Damari Austin, Jeremiah Cobb out of Montgomery Catholic, this Darrell Robinson out of UConn. I know Doug Dean really likes him. Alvin Henderson out of the Isle of Elba. Wasn't that where Napoleon was exiled for a while? But Elba, Alabama, named after the Isle. But I got to ask you, this running back room, when Auburn people start sniffing a great running back, they get really excited. Are you excited about this room?
Look, I think it's a really good room. I also think that, until you figure out a guy who's going to be a workhorse, then it'll probably be running back by committee. And it may be some of that anyway. Yeah. I think all those guys can play. The kid from the kid from UConn is supposed to be really good. I know he was hurt part of the time he was up there, but I've heard really, really good things about him. So it's a look. I think Auburn people have a right to be excited about the upcoming season. I think the depth on the football team, not just at running back, quarterback, but across the board, is better than it's been in years. Does that mean Auburn's going to come out and win 10 games, make the playoff? No, but it ought to mean that certainly there's a winning season and a decent bowl game, I would think. If not, then there's a problem somewhere.
Kevin, you look at the last 5 years, especially the last 2 under Hugh Freeze. Auburn's not getting, curb stomped out there every Saturday. Their losses are, you can just pinpoint quarterback play, schemes. One blowout these last 2. That LSU loss, it's not unusual for Auburn to go down to LSU and look not great. So that being said, I don't think it's a far reach, because I got Auburn, and I'm more critical of Auburn than any school because it's my school. But I got Auburn winning 10 this year. I see 10 wins happening this year. You talk about the running back room, but that 04, 05 receiver room at Auburn, Tuberville had Anthony Mix, Courtney Taylor. I mean, Devin Aroma should do, Ben Obamanu. Let's talk about that group. Now, granted, that we're talking about their whole career. We hadn't seen this group, but talk about this receiver group. I can't remember Auburn having 2 groups like this on offense of skilled players.
Well, I don't think there's any concern about the ability of the receivers to get separation, to go up in traffic if they have to make a catch, maybe make a catch if the ball's not thrown perfectly on time and on target. Much like they don't necessarily have a tight end. Nobody has a tight end like Brock Bowers, but Brock Bowers was the difference in that Georgia game 2 years ago. Yeah, in Jordan-Hare Stadium. And he had to make some incredible catches on the winning touchdown drive that Georgia put together late in the game to break the tie and win it 27-20. So they're going to make plays. So the question becomes, and this is going to be a temptation for Hugh Freeze. We know he loves to throw the football. We know he loves RPOs, and we know the P is a capital letter. The R is more of a lowercase letter in Hugh Freeze's version of RPOs. Can he avoid the temptation at times to lean maybe too much on those guys, put a little extra pressure on your offensive line to protect, on Jackson Arnold to make the right decisions, to go to the right guy at the right time, and not ignore his running backs and get a little bit out of balance there. That's something that I want to see from Hugh Freeze, especially because they're going to be tested in that very first game by a pretty quality defensive coordinator. Although Baylor was better on offense last year. When they won 6 in a row in the back half of the regular season, they were way better on offense than they were on defense, even with a defensive head coach in Dave Aranda.
Yeah. And Kevin and Ronnie, Dave Aranda out of California Lutheran, he was a classmate there with Tom Herman, who, by the way, when Tom Herman was at Texas, I have this on good accord that you were born Nathan Huffines. Any reason your name is Nathan Arizona? Who'd buy furniture from unpainted Arizona? Well, I have it on good accord. When Tom Herman was at Texas, he was meeting with one of the most prominent high school football coaches in the state. He spent about 45 minutes talking to him. And the coach said, hey, I've got a list of about 25 kids that you need to take a look at that can flat out ball. Herman spent 45 minutes talking to the guy, got up, walked out, and left it on the guy's desk. It's Tom Herman. But how do you attack Dave Aranda's defense? He's familiar with SEC style of play. But, Ronnie, Baylor, I don't think it's going to be hard to get Auburn motivated for that first game, because as it gets closer to kickoff, guys, we're 720 hours and 32 minutes and 19 seconds. It's going to be a hell of a challenge.
Yeah, it will be. And, I think the question you asked earlier, Rob, about can Freeze take a step back and not be too pass heavy. I think that's critical, because if you look at what he did last year, you look at what he did the year before, and you look at his career, and look, I've said this on this show before. Very prominent defensive coordinator told me not too long ago, said, hey, look, he can't help himself. And the question is going to be, look, you've got great receivers, you got a great quarterback, you've got a lot of weapons, but you also got a pretty good running back room. And so when you need to run the ball, when you need a 3rd and 1, are you going to run it off? Or are you going to run a trick play? Or are you going to run, there are a lot of different ways to get 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, or whatever it may be. But, it's pretty, it can be disheartening for a defense when you can hand it to a big back and pick up 3 yards whenever you want.
Kevin, in today's football world, y'all both would agree it's running back by committee. Instead of a running back having a pout face because he didn't get 30 or 40 carries in a game, they're going, hey, I don't want but 10 to 12, because the NFL people say I need to have a lot of miles left on my tire treads. It's a different world. Yeah,
I think there's been a change in mindset there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think players realize, we talk about, kids today, they don't want to wait their turn. They don't want to develop. They want to star right now. Yep. They want the ball. But I think particularly at that position, it's going to be rare to find a guy. And I flash back to 2017. Kerryon Johnson has created some little bit of a stir on Twitter, on his Twitter account recently with Auburn fans. But Kerryon was so good in 2017, but he got banged up late in the year, and he tried to go in the SEC championship game, but they don't beat Georgia without Kerryon Johnson at the end of the late in the regular season. They don't beat Alabama without Kerryon Johnson, but he got banged up in the Iron Bowl, and he was not close to himself when they met Georgia in the rematch in the SEC championship game. Yep. So there's a danger. Yeah, there's a danger there of overusing backs. Yeah. Again, this is where the best offensive coordinators, the best play callers, separate themselves by making good decisions, by balancing, leaning on a guy like Kerryon Johnson who could make plays in so many ways, both if you hand it to him, if you throw it to him. But you got to be smart too. It's a long season. Yeah. And you got to keep your stars healthy.
Well, is it fair? Yeah.
Especially in today's game. Used to you had 11 games in a bowl game, and now all of a sudden you've got 12 games. You've got a conference championship game. You got a playoff. it's more like an NFL season now than it ever has been. And so you gotta spell guys. You gotta give them a break, and like as you said, Kevin, try to keep them healthy.
Here's a question: that 2017 Auburn team, if Cam Petway isn't in the doghouse all year long for whatever he was doing, stupid, and he's able to give Kerryon Johnson in 2017 a break here and there, because Cam in 2016 was like the best running back in the SEC. I think Auburn wins the national championship in 2017. I have no doubt.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't be that bold. But my thought on 2017 in thinking about comparisons, and look, comparisons are usually unfair.
Yeah,
because every player is different.
Yeah,
and has its own strengths and weaknesses. But do you guys see any similarities, shall we say, between Jarrett Stidham and Jackson Arnold?
No.
Ronnie, you're smiling. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying I do. I don't know why it just popped into my head as we were talking about 2017.
You know, I guess everybody in their own ways. You know, I mean, yes and no. Yes and no, Rob.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I talked to Jackson Arnold, and I talked to someone who knows him very well from Oklahoma that covers the program. His son and Jackson are training with the same guy in Dallas, Jeff Christensen. I learned a lot about Jackson. I think he is a warrior, and I think he is a fierce competitor. But I think what happened to him last year at Oklahoma never happened to him before in his life. You know, he lived in Sewanee, Georgia till he was 10, grew up a Georgia fan, knows all about Auburn and Georgia. But I think Jackson is there's no doubt he's QB1. You know, what's that Friday Night Lights series that was so good on Netflix? He loves being a kid from the state of Texas. And I asked him, you know, he gets to go play at A&M, at Oklahoma, at Baylor. His family, he's going to have like several busloads of family there and friends. It's a big deal to him. I think Jarrett Stidham, you're right. I mean, you know what, Kevin, I'm going to go back and say, yeah, I do see similarities. They're both from Texas. They win a lot. So, yeah, there are similarities.
But I also think that Jarrett is going to have, you know, we hope, better coaching at the quarterback position than Jarrett Stidham had at times. You know,
that's fair. Think, that's very fair.
Very fair, Ronnie. I concur with Professor Scarbinsky.
I'm trying to be
polite,
judicious. Yes.
Yes.
So I obviously Freeze has a more intricate passing game, a more developed passing game than Gus Malzahn ever did, and
ever will,
and ever will. So so you know, I think from a coaching standpoint, look, if Jarrett Stidham had a different coach at Auburn, does his tenure there look different? And it wasn't bad, but I think the answer is yes. Does Jackson Arnold come to Auburn if Gus Malzahn's the coach? I mean, probably not, because he's a 5-star quarterback. He can come out and he can do it both ways. He doesn't just want to run the ball. He wants to throw it too. So I think Hugh Freeze's system is a great fit for him. I think Auburn's a great fit for him. You know, it's always tough when a young kid is thrown into a position like he was last year. And you've got all the injuries and all the things that go down around you. It's tough. I mean, same thing happened to us at Auburn in '98. You know, if you remember, we had 6 offensive linemen. I think TJ Dunnigan ended up starting center or something. You know, it was. We lost all those guys for the year. You know,
weren't there about 4 or 5 different centers?
Yeah,
that year.
There were 5 or 6. I forget, it was 5 or 6. And they were all lost to season-ending injuries.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then obviously we lost a bunch of guys from the year before, Damian and Takeo Spikes and Fred Beasley and Kevin McLeod and a whole bunch of other guys. So you take that and then you throw in some injuries and you end up with 3-8. So and the head coach quit in the middle of the year. So
Yeah, it was a nightmare.
We remember it well.
Yeah. It was a nightmare. I want to ask now on defense. You just talked about some of the greatest players ever. I'm looking at this defensive front, and look at Keldrick Falk as one of the 4 preseason all-conference defensive linemen. And you stand next to that guy. We all have 6'6". He's now up to 285. I looked at, by the way, folks, go to this website, AU Undercover, 24/7. They literally are 24/7. You wake up at 2 a.m. to go get something out of the fridge, get on the website. It's amazing. But I think Keldrick's up to 285 out of Highland Home, Alabama, where the Hyundai plant is. He moves around, guys. He's quick as a cat. And I have 2 cats. I can say that with some gravitas. But I'm looking at Malik Autry, Malik Blockton, Quintel Jamison Travis. It's one of the hardest names to pronounce. But Auburn's got some good guys on that front 7. Let's talk about that, because if they're better, Durkin can flat out coach. That's why I think Auburn can win 10.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, what is it they say? Good weight. Certainly, Keldrick Falk put on good weight. He doesn't look 285.
205. That's what
he carries it. Yeah, because he moves so well.
God,
look, this guy, he could be an All-American.
Yeah,
he could be one of the best defensive players in the SEC, which means he would be one of the better defensive players in the country.
Yeah.
He's going to have an impact, and you need impact guys, especially at the edge. If you can make the plays that he can make, and you can disrupt the quarterback the way that he has shown he can, and you do that on a consistent basis, I think that defense could be a problem for people.
Yeah, I agree. And look, let's not forget Durkin has some Will Muschamp. He's worked with Will. He has the same philosophy, and those guys are really, really close. In fact, I know DJ had a number of detailed discussions with Will before he took the Auburn job. Wow. So, look, I think that Auburn has a chance to be really good on both sides of the ball. It's just, look, there's so many young guys. A lot of them played a lot last year, which is good. But it's, you didn't have a winning record last year. Hadn't had a winning record in 4 years. So it's going to be an interesting year. I mean, I think Auburn fans have a right to be cautiously optimistic. I mean, this should be a step up.
Well, the problem is, I think both y'all would agree, is everybody's stuck on these last 5 years. And, they'll say you can't have a new reality with an old mentality. Everybody's just got to look past it. And I really think what you just said about DJ Durkin and his close relationship with Will Muschamp, DJ, that's another kid from, by the way, St. Francis Catholic School in Baltimore, is Darrell Robinson. Auburn's got like 4 or 5 kids. They're going to have mass before practice. It's going to be a big deal. I really think when you talk about this defense and you look at the linebackers, DeMarcus Riddick, and I think Jason Caldwell told me, maybe it was Jason, I'm going to make sure I'm correct, his senior year in Clanton, Chilton County, he played some safety. They had him moving all around. Whatever his playing weight is now, DeMarcus is he's freakishly talented. And now you got Robert Woodyard out of Mobile, a rare redshirt junior who has stuck it out. There's some guys that have been around here a while, Kevin.
That's why, I'm trying to reflect on when's the last time Auburn had what you would call a dominant defense? With Derek Browne and those guys. I mean, you go back to 2019, and they gave LSU all they wanted.
Yes,
in Baton Rouge, I think, and I'm fairly certain of this, they held LSU to fewer points than anybody else all season, and that was Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and all those guys. Yeah. Nobody stopped those guys all year, and Auburn didn't stop them, and they didn't beat them, but they held them down as well as anybody did. So can this defense perform at that level week in and week out?
The running back from Sebring, Florida, had not stepped out of bounds when he broke free on that big run. history would be a lot different. Was it J.D. Williams, the running back?
Yeah, I don't remember the name now.
But he broke through 70 yards. It was 23-20. And I remember that game well. But you know why the NFL Matt Rule took Derek Browne number 7. Talk about character. He was from Sugar Hill, Buford, Georgia, Lanier. He said in the Minnesota loss, the game was out of reach. Minnesota's about to score. They're down there on the goal line, and Derek Browne is still diving after people, trying to make tackles, running sideline to sideline. Give me a team full of Derek Browns. You can beat anybody. But I'd say 2019, Ronnie, last one.
Probably so. Certainly you look since then, it hasn't been, there hasn't been a lot to compare it to. It's been, it certainly hasn't been great.
And
I lowered the bar.
they're going to be tested in that Baylor game. Like I said, go back and look at the scores. Baylor was struggling last year. Dave Aranda was on the hot seat the first half of the year, and then they reel off 6 wins in a row, and they did it primarily on the strength of their offense. There are people predicting Sawyer Robertson, their quarterback, will be the best quarterback in the Big 12 this year. I heard someone mention today that they may have the best quarterback running back combination in the Big 12 this season. I think their stud tailback was a freshman last year, ran for 1,000 yards. So the Auburn's going to be tested on both sides of the ball, and that's the danger of scheduling like this, because you've got a team, a program, even a fan base that's confident, but that confidence has to be a little fragile. You need some solid evidence to support that confidence once you actually get to the season, once the games begin. So they are taking a risk by not playing. If this would be a year you might think, well, better to play Ball State first and then Baylor. Obviously, that's not going to be the case. So they've challenged themselves, and then those 3 road games before the end of September. That's really going to be the story of this season. If they're going to really take a giant leap forward,
I agree.
You got to go at least 2-1 in Waco, College Station, and Norman.
Yeah, I agree. While we're talking about Baylor, did either one of you guys happen to watch Dave Aranda's appearance at Big 12 Media Days?
His I don't even know what to call that. His rant. It wasn't really a rant about the Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a rant. I would call it maybe I'm not sure what I'd call it, but
it was like one of his wires came loose or something in his brain. And it was like he started off trying to make a point and tell a story, and he lost his way fairly early in that verbal journey and never really got himself back on the path. I still don't know what he was trying to say or what he meant. Exactly. That's well said, Ronnie.
Out in Frisco, Texas. This is what, his 6th year at Baylor?
I
think that's right. I think he
left after 2019.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And he came from Wisconsin originally. Of course, California Lutheran, classmates with Tom the Hermit Herman.
They're getting mentioned as a Big 12 favorite. Some people have picked them to win the league. Of course, the league didn't do an official preseason poll because last year Arizona State finished last in that poll and went on and won the league. And I think there's some justification for this. The preseason polls set a tone. They put ideas in people's heads. Well, this team's not very good. That team's really good. And they create expectations that may or may not be accurate and fair. So I could see some wisdom in that. But look, they're fun to do. But some people can be influenced. And it's hard to break first impressions. That's why the Baylor game is so important for Auburn. It's going to create a first impression about this team and Jackson Arnold as a quarterback, this offense, and this DJ Durkin defense. That's, it's not irreversible. It's not going to be set in cement. The world won't end or the season won't end if they lose the game. But how do they look even if things do go wrong and they don't win the game? That's going to be just as important as the final score.
Yeah. And I think, look, we've talked about before, there are a lot of young players on this team. What happens if things go south early? can Hugh Freeze hold it together? And I think, look, from personal experience, I've been on 4 different places, been fired, 3 times, twice in the middle of the season. So, I've got an idea what it looks like. But I mean,
thick skin.
Yeah. We're at Florida in 2004, whenever it was, we got fired and lose to Mississippi State middle of the season. And they were terrible. It was Sylvester Croom was there as the head coach. Ellis Johnson was the defensive coordinator, and they were awful. And we come in with a young team and Chris Leakey quarterback, and we lose in Starkville, get fired the next Monday. And but it was a really, really young football team. And most of those players, I think we signed every starter except one on Urban Meyer's first national championship team. So all those guys came along. But the point I guess I'm making is that we fell hard in the middle of the season, even get fired, had a coaching change in the middle of the season. Head coach stays on. We lose to Georgia the next week in the cocktail party, but barely. And then we went out, beat Florida State for the first time in Tallahassee in 20 years, and ended up having a decent season. So, but those are all young guys. And so, Auburn's in a little bit of that situation. I do think, look, the receivers, the running back room, it's just, you've got some guys who are really, really talented. Can they gel quickly enough before Baylor and that September run to, Kevin, I think you're right. I mean, you finish those games 2-1, then you got a shot. You got a shot coming out of September, but a lot of it is going to be dependent on how well look, you got a completely different quarterback room, and everybody knows if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance.
Yeah. So
I think Auburn's got a quarterback. The question is, what kind of chemistry does he develop with these receivers and the backs and the offensive line, and and on and on. And again, it's a new offense for all these guys. I mean, say what you want to, it may be similar, but you're still learning terminology, and you're still figuring out your teammates.
Yeah. I flash back, and this is going to be part of my column tomorrow. I encourage people to read it in the Birmingham News and on AL.com about a new starting quarterback. And I flash back to 10 years ago. You can get a false impression from an opening game.
Yeah.
You can think a team is better than it is. You guys remember the Louisville game back in 2015.
Oh, yeah.
And Jeremy Johnson's first game as the guy, the QB1. And he had done some really good things before that in his first 2 years. And people were, and it still amazes me, even mentioning him in the same sentence as Cam Newton, because they were both, that was a size thing more than anything. They were very different players and certainly had very different outcomes as starting quarterbacks at Auburn.
Slightly.
But that was but you knew, but even as the game was going on, and I think Jeremy threw a couple of picks in that first game, and just, they were ugly picks in double, triple coverage. And all of a sudden, people were very confident in Jeremy Johnson going into the season. And all of a sudden you're thinking, whoa, wait a minute. They won the game, and Lamar Jackson, that might've been his first start at Louisville.
It was
actually.
Yeah.
And they played in Atlanta, and all of a sudden you're thinking, well, Auburn won the game, but whoa. And then of course, Jacksonville State happened the next week. And then they went to LSU, and then and that was essentially, that 3-game stretch was essentially Jeremy Johnson's career as the starter. He'd have to come back after Sean White got hurt and play again, but he was done. And by the way, there's a great documentary in which AL.com caught up with Jeremy Johnson. It's called The Redemption of Jeremy Johnson, and they just came out with it last month. Yes. Really, really good. I encourage people to watch that. And Jeremy was they got him to open up about how difficult that was, and this idea of confidence for a quarterback. And if you're an Auburn person, I think I would highly recommend, if you haven't seen it. It's really, really good. And Jeremy was very open and honest. And he said after the LSU game, remember he dropped back to throw a pass, and the ball just kind of
the backwards pass. Yes.
Slipped backwards out of his hand. And if there's one play that defines his career at Auburn, unfortunately it's probably that one. And he said he basically mentally after that checked out. And then they made a change, and Sean White became the starter. So how you start, it's a long season, but especially if you're a quarterback, we're talking about confidence. It's going to be really important for Jackson Arnold to come out of that first game, win, lose, or draw. No draws anymore, of course, but just come out of there with actual confidence based on actual performance against another team.
Yeah. And Freeze has got to do a good job also of managing play calling. He's got to do things that will put Jackson Arnold, especially early in the season. I mean, as he gains confidence and works his way through the offense, then you can do more. But early in the season, with a new quarterback, with a completely new quarterback room, and the backup likely to be a true freshman, you better manage the quarterback you have on the field, not only from an injury standpoint because it's a long season, but keep his confidence up. Do some things early on, especially in that Baylor game. Easy runs, easy throws, things to kind of get him moving, feeling good about himself. And then as the season goes along, open it up. But I think with a brand new quarterback, and again, a completely new quarterback room, young guys on the team, I think Freeze has got to do a good job of managing him, because as much as anything else, that's coaching, because you can't put a guy out there and put him in a position where he can't win. It's kind of like with your.
Yeah. Ronnie, but I think what he was saying, Kevin, what you've got to do, a quarterback room, you better have confidence. And those guys have got to trust each other, but you got to trust them too.
And I thought Ronnie made a great point about how Hugh Freeze has to manage Jackson Arnold. Think about last year.
That's right.
I mean, he did he lose faith in Peyton Thorne too early? And he went, who did he go to? Hank Browne? Was it Hank Browne?
Yeah.
They went to, and that didn't work very well. And so they had to go back to Peyton Thorne. And to his credit, he didn't check out mentally. He kept competing. But I think he was limited in a lot of ways. And I don't think Hugh Freeze necessarily managed Peyton Thorne very well. I don't know that he got the best out of Peyton Thorne. I don't think Peyton Thorne's ceiling was necessarily as high as Auburn hoped it would be, but I don't think they got him to his ceiling by any stretch of the imagination. And that's really going to be a huge part of this season, Rob. If they can be what you think they can be, and they can get to that 10-win plateau, it will be one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, will be Hugh Freeze got the best out of Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. If you look at the last 2 years, inadequate quarterback play and offensive line struggles. And now you got 82 combined starts with this unit for Auburn. At the end of the season, you could have 60 more, and that's 142. You win a national championship, you're going to be in the 160, 170 plus of combined starts. And we talked about it last night on this channel with Lauren Meadows. Florida's offensive line going into this season, 4,000 plus snaps together. That's a big deal. But you know what? The reason I think Auburn is so close, this is like following a stock that looks like it's about to break out, is because the quarterback play the last couple of years, and Ronnie alluded to it a minute ago. Hugh Freeze just can't help himself. And when Auburn was giddy about, turning Jarquez loose against Kentucky for 278 yards on Tuesday and Wednesday, they weren't getting prepared for Vanderbilt. And Auburn has just got to get away from this. They've never lost to Ole Miss in history since 1892, February 20th at Piedmont Park in Atlanta. They've never lost to Ole Miss back-to-back, ever. They've done it in this last 5 years. They have never lost to South Carolina back-to-back. They did it in 2021. But they're not getting blown out 49-3. Auburn is so close. And now I think I like the fact a guy doesn't – but I also say – and you talked about Trent Dilfer yesterday on your podcast, which is awesome, by the way. Scarbo knows. Trent Dilfer ran the Elite 11 camp. Well, hell, Sean White was the MVP out of that. Sean's a nice guy, but, he certainly was no Tua or Cam. It's just weird.
You're gonna set me off here, Rob.
Okay.
When Sean White took over for Jeremy Johnson,
I
I distinctly remember this. I don't know who wrote the story. It was not me. Someone reached out to Trent Dilfer, who then, as you said, was running the Elite 11 camp, and Sean White was very good. He may, as you said, was he the MVP there?
Yeah.
And Trent Dilfer talked about Sean White as if he were the second coming of Joe Montana.
Yeah.
Before he had ever taken a snap at Auburn, before he'd ever accomplished anything. And it just, and I wrote a column saying, what are you doing? I know you have confidence in your guy. I know you have faith in him. That's great. But why would you put these expectations on him? What if he's just good and not great?
Yeah.
You've set the bar so high for him that there's no way he's going to reach it. And he didn't.
No.
Right.
So that's why expectations, I think coaches have to be careful. Certainly former coaches, quarterback coaches, you want to be confident in your guy and you want to help lift up their confidence. But you have to be careful too. And I think Jeremy Johnson in some ways was a victim of that. People expected greatness out of him right away. And it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And he never got it back.
Pat Sullivan told me that same story, guys, when I was doing my show at Weagle when I was in college at Auburn. He told me on air, and I've still got that recording somewhere, but he said, we couldn't play as freshmen. I came out of John Carroll in Birmingham, and man, the expectations for Terry Beasley and me, and it was, he goes, it was heavy. But he said, if I'd have gone on the road to Knoxville or down in the swamp in Gainesville or in Athens between the hedges and had a Jeremy Johnson game like he did against LSU, the infamous backwards pass, still never gotten over that, still I have therapy over it. He goes, I may have never recovered. And he said, Coach Jordan, Coach Lorindo, the Auburn coaches, they knew that. But when we went on the road against the Alabama freshman team, that kind of set the tone. But remember what Sullivan said, his first pass to Terry Beasley, he overthrew him about 20 yards and the crowd gave him a standing ovation. I mean, it's just, there was a little bit of electricity in that one. But I think you're right. And also, Trent Dilfer, Ronnie, didn't he say something about Hank Browne? Well, he'll be in New York. Well, I'm not sure if doing what, as a tourist maybe, but didn't he go to Iowa?
I don't know. I've got a question for Kevin. I know this is an Auburn show and everything, but where does UAB end up with this whole situation?
Yeah,
is there going to be a change there, or what are your thoughts?
I think this is prove it or lose it year for Trent Dilfer. I mean, they've lost all the momentum of the Bill Clark era.
Yeah,
all the good things that happened with the return, the construction of Protective Stadium. They built an incredible on-campus football operations building with a unique idea, a covered pavilion. They couldn't afford a full indoor facility, so they built a pavilion so they could practice at least somewhat out of the elements, and they also have an outdoor practice field there at that part of that complex. So they built facilities. They got the local community involved, and this was all because of Bill Clark, because of his relationships. It meant something to him to be the coach at UAB. I'm not saying it doesn't mean something to Trent Dilfer, but if he gets fired, look, he was wealthy when he got here. He'll be wealthy when he leaves. He'll go do something else. And so I don't know if it doesn't mean the same thing to him that it meant to Bill Clark. And now you're in a tougher conference in the American. You are not well equipped in the NIL era and the revenue sharing era to compete with the Memphises of the world, and even people like UTSA and some of the other folks in the American, Tulane. You're just in a tough spot now as UAB, and you've lost all that momentum. So we'll see if they can win. They went 4-8 2 years ago. They went 3-9 last year. Can they get to 6-6? I don't see it. I don't believe it. I'll have to see it to believe it. But I think they're going to be looking for a coach at the end of this year.
The interesting thing is that, there were a lot of guys that were interested in that job. A lot of guys that weren't a high school coach. A lot of guys who were really, really qualified. A lot of guys I know.
Who wanted the job? You know a number of them, Ronnie. Barry Odom wanted the job. And do you know what the UAB athletic director told people? He talked to him, and he knew him from Missouri. Mark Ingram, the UAB AD, had worked at Missouri when Barry Odom was there. And Barry Odom was very interested in the UAB job. They didn't hire him in part because Mark Ingram told other people close to the program, he's kind of dull. It's kind of boring. It's not very exciting. Well, look, Trent Dilfer is a great interview. Trent Dilfer, he will fill up your notebook.
Yes.
Every week. He'll also say some stupid things, like, well, hey, we're not freaking Alabama, as he said. That created an unnecessary controversy last year when he said that after another
Or we're going to
loss.
recruit better than anybody in the state other than Alabama. I mean,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, another infamous utterance out of his pie hole. But I just don't. Again, they could have hired any number of better coaches who had experience, who knew what it took. And then and then not only do they hire this guy with no college coaching experience, then he brings in a bunch of high school coaches that have never been there or done that on the college level. And again, you've seen the results.
Kevin, how about? Yeah, or better yet, how about not run? You know, I know Bill Clark had some health issues, but let's be real. How about not running Bill Clark off to begin with?
Well, Bill Clark's back issues were real. He did have fusion surgery. He had increasing pain in his back, and he'd experienced it for a long, long time. But a bigger pain in his neck was dealing with an administration that wasn't necessarily as supportive as it could have been, should have been, or would have been had the people in charge been different.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, now, again, we go back here with this Auburn quarterback situation. He thought Hank Browne was the answer. He looked good against, was it New Mexico last year? But
sounds right.
Played an SEC game, and he had multiple picks. So now I can't remember Auburn having a deeper quarterback room. And we've seen Jackson Arnold play in the SEC. He's got a year under his belt. So that's why I think it's okay for Auburn fans to come out and get excited. I mean, it's going to be a good year. I really believe it. I'm not saying it for any other reason other than connect the dots. If the quarterback play is a lot better than it has been the last 2 years, and you have to say to, Hugh Freeze, okay, Peyton Thorne the first year, you live and you learn. But you brought him back a second year, and you did pull the plug. You put in Hank Browne, but then you went back to him. And Peyton's a nice young man, but it didn't work out. And now Jackson Arnold, you get around that guy, he does not lack confidence.
No, he does not. No, he does not. Hey, and this is because obviously we're just starting fall camp. So we're speculating and wondering about a lot of things that we'll finally get some answers starting August 29th. But in a strange way, does having some depth, it appears real depth in the quarterback room. You do have you have two former starting quarterbacks in college, and then you have this highly touted freshman. Is it going to be tempting to Hugh Freeze if Jackson Arnold does struggle to say, hey, let him sit, and not saying bench him, but coaches are so reluctant to do this, Ronnie. If your guy's struggling, let him sit out a series. It doesn't mean you've benched him. He's gone forever. You've lost confidence in him. Maybe a different look for the defense. Maybe gives you a spark. Maybe Deuce Knight comes in as Austin Simmons did for Georgia last year. For Ole Miss last year against Georgia. When Jackson Dart had to go out, they bring in Austin Simmons. He leads a touchdown drive. They didn't change quarterbacks. I think but that little spark helped Ole Miss win that game.
Absolutely, Kevin. I think you're right. And I think the other thing you have to do is you've got to create packages during the week, during game prep. Okay, what can Deuce Knight do? What can Ashton Daniels do? Do you have packages for those guys to bring them in, not only to help your football team, but to keep them bought in the quarterback room? You got Deuce Knight there, who's a young guy. He's a true freshman. You got Jackson Arnold, who's, look, he's a great player. He may be around 2 years, but is Deuce Knight going to wait that long to play? So you've got to figure out a way to get those guys on the field and keep them happy in a way that'll help your football team. You don't want to keep a guy happy at the expense of your team. But if you can put together packages for him the way Terry Bowden did with Damian Craig, the way we did with some different guys at Florida, the way we did with different guys at other places. If you can bring in guys in a particular package in certain situations. Not only are you, Kevin, as you point out, giving your other guy a break, but you're killing three birds with one stone.
That's a really good point. And one of the best combos, Rob, you mentioned it, was Chris Leak as a senior and Tim Tebow as a freshman. Yeah, defined roles. There was no question. Chris Leak was the starter. He was the guy that could sling it. And Tebow was the battering ram in short yardage. He might throw a jump pass, but he was a weapon, and you got him engaged.
Mhm.
And so he wasn't a deer in the headlights the next year when he took over as the starter. All he did the next year was win, in his first year as a starter, win the Heisman.
Yeah.
So that's the ideal scenario. And now you have to worry about, as you said, Ronnie, keeping those guys engaged because they can leave. If they don't like the way they're being used or not used, they can leave in a hurry.
That's right. And it's not just now it's not just the quarterback room. I mean, if you're Hugh Freeze, you're not selling playing time anymore. You've got a team full of young guys. So now it's put up or shut up, because you've had 3 years of recruiting classes. What a number 11 class, 2 top 10 classes. You've recruited well in the state. And so now it's, look, as we said before, you're not selling playing time. You're selling, now you've got to win. And that's how you keep recruiting. And obviously
but if you're going to bet on a team that has a lot of tradition, like Auburn, that's got an improving roster. That's a good bet, because the earnings forecast for the upcoming year on Auburn are good. I think dividends are going to. I just think the roster, Auburn's now back up to like number 11 on the blue chip index. 64% of the roster is 4 and 5 stars signed in the last 4-year cycle. So I think Auburn optimism. The fear is the freeze factor. Everybody's like going, he can't get out of his way. Will he start getting out of his way? If he does that, this could be a great year for Auburn. And that's just a big if.
Well, and people want to beat up Freeze, and I'm not saying that there aren't reasons for that, but I mean, when's the last time Auburn had a coach that couldn't get out of his own way?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that could get out of his own way.
Yeah.
They could.
There you go, Ronnie.
Yes.
Jabba. It's just,
Gus would fit.
I mean, look.
Hey guys, here's a
Chip Lindsey's the last time Auburn could throw the ball, right? I mean,
hey, here's a good question. What would be the best case scenario for Auburn in game 1? Obviously, you want to win, right? Would it be better to win by 3 touchdowns and just be physically superior to Baylor, or would it be in a tight game that goes back and forth and you do the things that they haven't done the last 2 years under Hugh Freeze, and that's find a way to win at the end, make a stop, put together a drive, make the right play call on 3rd and goal from the 7 in the last minute to score the winning touchdown? Which would be the better scenario for the overall development of this team for this season?
The latter.
Probably the latter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I don't think either case.
No.
Is.
No.
I think
the W is the most important thing, however it happens. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I also think, if you come out and blow out Baylor, then everybody's going to feel great about themselves and
and
all that stuff. That could be good and bad. Again, you've got a young team. I know I've stated that a bunch of times. I mean, if you come out and you're overconfident, and then you get blown out by Texas A&M. I mean, what you want to do, usually the most improvement all season long comes from game 1 to game 2.
It does. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, but I'm with you. I like that scenario, the latter. But hey, for executive producer Brendan Martin, great show today, guys. Spread the word. Auburn Undercover. Watch it all the time on this channel. Thank you.
Like and subscribe.
Absolutely.